18 Planning Commission meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
And roll call.
Commissioner Mark Mazzoni. Here. Commissioner Darrell Parham.
Present.
Commissioner Donna Winger. Here. Vice Chair Monica Zinda.
Here. Well, since we have no public, I guess we do not have any non-agenda public comment. Do we have any conflicts of interest? Then we're on to the regular agenda, which starts with the election of officers. Do we start with just,
Yeah, we'll take nominations. We have the chair. The officer of chair is open, so we will take nominations for the office of chair.
I nominate Monica Zinda.
We have Monica Zinda nominated. Are there any other nominations? Okay. All in favor of Monica Zinda becoming the chair of the Planning Commission?
Aye.
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 Okay, Monica Zinda is chair.
and that means we have to elect a vice chair. Okay. Do we have any nominations for vice chair? I myself would like to nominate Donna Winger. Do we have any other nominations? Do we have an eye on Donna Winger? I'm missing the protocol here.
Donna Winger has been nominated as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Donna Winger has been elected vice chair of the Planning Commission.
And there we go. So we have approval of the minutes for May 16th, 2018. Are there any corrections or any motions on the minutes? No?
Nope.
Then the minutes stand approved as written. Oh, okay, I missed one, I'm sorry about that. I missed B on the regular agenda, which is the content of this whole meeting.
Pretty much.
Establishment of procedures, and I'm assuming that we're going to be hearing from Keith about that.
Thank you, Chairman Zinda.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is just when I was planning for a long time, we always had workshops, like in public, planning law. I'm not so sure you guys have really been doing that here. So this is kind of one of the things that I would have covered or had our city attorney back in my other city come and present things like how to deal with conditional use permits, how to deal with variances, how to deal with conflict of interest. Well, this one is just basically about how to deal with public hearings. We have two pretty new commissioners, two old pros. Still, I think some of this, no matter how long you've been on the Planning Commission, some of this information might be useful to you. And basically, just a reminder of public hearing protocol, because I remember once I couldn't find that, and I don't think that the city had published that before. Usually it's kind of on the back of an agenda or whatever. Maybe something we can start doing. So we have that. That's very important. Just how to, for especially a new chair, here's this, what you do, and also just some other kind of rules that the deputy city clerk and other staff members have kind of thrown together, and it's basic, kind of like how to kind of be polite and be nice and be fair. That's the most important thing. So let me just start by I'm sure you've all read the memo. Okay, so I'm not going to read the memo or anything, but I'm going to kind of pick out some of the stuff that I think is important. And one of the things that we don't really discuss enough, and maybe I don't even think about enough, is types of public hearings. You know, we just call a public hearing, but there are actually two types. One is a legislative hearing, and then a quasi-judicial. And there's differences. Legislative is like when you're doing a zoning code amendment that's not necessarily to do with a single property. It's just citywide, or a general plan amendment. Those are a little bit less on the, importance of making decisions on the record and all that stuff, and basing your decision on evidence. That's a little less strict. And that's basically what we are used to doing here. We've had plenty of zoning amendments. We've had we just had a general plan made, and those were legislative. Now, we have had conditional use permit, conditional use permit applications that we've processed, but we didn't really distinguish it from a regular, a public hearing. But now, when it's a quasi-judicial, that means that you're basing your decision on evidence on the record. And basically, it's a little bit stricter when it comes down to procedure, and being fair. And the idea, well, let's see, I'll kind of just cruise through this. Legislative hearings generally affect a large segment of the public. Quasi-judicial involve the legal rights of specific identifiable parties, such as consideration of variances and use permits, and also site-specific zoning. That would be a quasi-judicial public hearing. So in a perfect world, you're supposed to, the decision is supposed to be made based on the evidence that you've, been presented. Like, let's say, well, for coming up next month, what's been on the record so far? Not much. An EIR, a scoping session, which is all in the EIR, all that's part of the record. And then you'll get a staff report and have a throw a public hearing. So just to be, I think the idea is to make sure everybody is treated fairly. And you want to make sure that the applicant, that the audience, the people that are here to speak or hear it feel welcome. And you don't want to have any intimidation, so they feel like they want to come up and speak. Same with the applicants. You don't want to, you just got to be fair, So that's it. When you talk about the record, you're going to be talking about the staff report, the EIR, the scoping session, the minutes from that stuff, anything on the record that we've done so far, and public input, and applicant input. So that's what you're basing the decision on. And I included a little thing about ex parte communication, because that's a huge gray area, and it's almost, in a small town, it's impossible for you guys not to be sitting in line at the grocery store or something, and someone's going to say, hey, you're on the planning commission. That project is, this and that and the other thing. Well, in a perfect world, you're supposed to kind of not participate in that. So it's, because it can be a problem. I think I used a little, like, for example, the little story about the judge. Imagine a defendant in court prior to the start of his trial finding out the opposing attorney had dinner with the judge and discussed your case with him. Oh, and your friend overheard him say that he already thought he was guilty, and it wasn't even the court date yet. So how would that be a fair trial? So think of ex parte communications in that way. Now, it's hard to not have those, but I think how you deal with it is either try to avoid it, but you have to bring them onto the record somehow. Like, if you get information from somebody in the public while you're in line at that grocery store, and then you kind of like, wow, yeah, you're right. I don't like that project either because of that. Well, it's really better to bring that onto the record somehow in your discussion, because if that's what you're using to base your decision and it's not on the record, well, then you've kind of done that little scenario with the judge and
Something along the line of, I had a conversation with so-and-so the other day, and he mentioned this, and I find that a very interesting point that I,
Yeah,
you know,
something like that. And
yeah, something like that, so it's on the record.
You've kind of heard me do this before. I had a conversation with Paul today about, or Donna today about this project. She asked this, that, and the other thing, because it wasn't in the staff report, let's say. And I answered this, that, and by the way, this. That's getting it back on the record. And, you know, that's kind of what you got to do. But really what it says in planning circles, ex parte or one-sided communications are usually problematic, either legally, ethically, or both. So they really kind of, they give you a little, this is from Planner's Web, I'm pretty sure. It says, the best advice is for commissioners to avoid ex parte communications or information completely. That's the perfect world. Try that in a small town like Weed.
But could you listen to them?
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you don't respond back
Well,
and
like I said,
Would that have
it's
to be on
almost
the record?
impossible. If this was a big city, you could go be anonymous and tell it's to the meeting, but, you know, we have a taco truck, we have places people, you know, gather, and it's kind of hard to avoid.
so if anybody tells you anything?
Well, you gotta, if you're using that information for part of your decision.
If you're just listening to it and going,
Right.
thank you,
Right, and if there's information that they give you that isn't necessarily on the record, but you actually are using that as part of your, you know, like, especially if you come to the meeting with a preconceived notion about what's going to happen and what you feel and how, oh, I'm just going to deny the project because I don't like it. I could care what they say. Well, that's not necessarily fair because you've already made up your mind, and it's not based on any evidence on the record. So you just got to try to be fair. It's really hard to avoid the ex parte communication, but if you have it and there was information that you kind of think is important, you should bring it into the record. And, you know, mention names. Like I got a call from so-and-so who lives down the street, or maybe you don't have to say the name. I don't know if you do or not.
was gonna say.
But that information needs to be available to everybody. So it's like inside job kind of thing. You know, it's just an appearance of fairness. And then, like, let's say that somebody finds out that that you maybe are a member of this group, and you haven't disclosed that, and then you already just came to the meeting with your decision, and somebody has evidence of that, you know, that could be used in court just as much as anything else. So that's ex parte communication. I understand how that is, because I get it all the time. When I was working full-time in my last position, I couldn't go out to the store or the restaurants without people wanting to talk to me about things. And, you know, it gets a little old, but you always got to work hard to, you know, be nice, fair. And if there is information that you're using, you got to bring it out into the open. That's about it.
What
And
if, what if you're wanting information? Where can you go before a meeting?
You call the staff or something like that if you have questions. Like,
So we should go to City Hall for that.
well, yeah, and like, I've always encouraged planning commissioners to call staff prior to the meeting. In fact, some of the stuff that I was reading to make this memo had that in it, and I was going to include that in my report, but, you know, I figured I'd ad lib it or something. But yeah, it's always better if you have questions about a project, and the staff report especially. It's so much better to come to the meeting with the information than it is to find out at the meeting.
Right.
So, let's say you called me, let's say we had a variance today, and you had questions. You called me today, and I come to the meeting. Well, during my staff report, I'm going to say, Chairman Zinda called me today, and she had this specific question about this and a specific question about that. And what we told her was this, and then therefore I'm going to change the staff report because I think she identified an error or, you know, something. And so it's just basically bringing it into the conversation, and that's on the record now. Get what I'm saying? So, like, stuff, you have to have it on the record. The decisions are supposed to be based on evidence on the record. That's about it. You know, you might have your, you know, I don't like these in general, but, you know, I guess you could still vote a certain way, but you sure don't want to appear like you've already made up your mind. Let's put it that way. So it's all about being fair, and that means to the applicant and to the audience. You know, sometimes we get it mixed up to, you know, we're not as fair to the applicant on some things, and we're not as fair. But we got to be, you know, above boards on the record with just about everything. And it's impossible in a small town to not have to discuss things. So don't worry about that. Don't sit and be look, I can't do this. Just consider it and bring it up at the meeting on the record. So, and that kind of leads to the next part, conflict of interest. Now, we all know about those. You know, even like if you're a member of something, I don't know, Audubon Society, and you're deciding on a use permit for a bird sanctuary, well, that may or may not affect your decision, but you want to say that, hey, you know what, I am a member of the Audubon Society, and I've been so for 3 years, and this is, you know, they all really want this project, but you know, you could probably either recuse yourself or just say something like, you know, like the president of the Audubon local chapter is a really good friend of mine, and although we're good friends, I'm still basing my decision on the evidence on the record. You know, you just got to say something. And if you want to, if you feel you need to recuse yourself from that discussion, you go ahead and do so. You know, some of the conflicts of interest are obvious. Like if you have a commissioner who has a use permit, you know, we've had Donna come forth with a use permit. Well, she recuses herself and goes in the audience, you know, and doesn't discuss that project with everybody else.
A really good example was once we had Great Northern Services come up to amend their design for their new building. I had to recuse myself because the original design was hiring me to do part of the work. So I had to recuse myself.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Right. And even though that might not have impacted your decision, that was a good decision to make.
Yeah, I was not
Yeah.
an uninterested
That's
party.
what it takes. You just really got to be conscious, you know. So, you know, local jurisdictions always have these kind of written protocols somewhere. Basically, it's pretty simple stuff that you guys already do. So, you know, chair introduces the agenda item. Then the staff report. And then also submitted correspondence is acknowledged and made part of the record. You know, like, oh, we got all these letters from so-and-so and so-and-so saying this and that and the other thing. Now they're part of the record, so guess what?
And do you literally have them, and what do? You turn around and present
Well,
them to
they
some?
usually give them to like, a lot of times they're already been mailed, and so we kind of talk about them. But some people bring things at the meeting.
That's
Now,
what I was
a little
wondering
tougher,
about, yeah.
But they go to the clerk. You know, most things, she's the keeper of all.
What about this whole draft EIR that's coming out in the public comment period? Are we going to see those public comments before
Absolutely.
the next meeting?
Probably not until the staff report, it comes out, you know, like a week before the meeting, because, and definitely they are part of the record. Because, okay, here's how that works. This is a good question. You have a comment period till a certain date. Well, then, hopefully there's enough time. See, that's why it's not good to rush this stuff. But, so once the comment period is closed, they're not accepting anymore, then they go to work, or maybe already have along the way as they trickle in, responding to them. And so that's all part of the final EIR. So we got a draft EIR. I had mine out a little while ago. It's like this big. And that's a draft until they respond to the comments. And then the comments are responded to, and if it has to change the EIR, like change mitigation measures that might change the whole project or something, sometimes they need to be recirculated and commented on again. A lot of times, mostly, that's usually not that way. But so the final EIR, which are usually about this big, and they go right on top of the other one, that's where you get the new mitigation measures if they were required because of comments in response to, or just in general, the responses to comments. Yes, you do get all that on the record. So the record already has the scoping session. If you remember when we had the scoping session about a year ago, I believe, maybe it was in October, I don't know. But all the people came up and talked about what they want to see in the EIR.
That wasn't us.
Well, it was a
Okay.
special meeting that you probably could have attended if you wanted.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
It was
yes.
like a
Yes.
Saturday or something.
Yes.
So those are part of the record too. So all those, that's part of the record. It's in the EIR, what they had, the notice, or either that or it's in an appendix or something. But all that stuff's dutifully put in the record because that's what an EIR is about. It's not an advocacy document for the project. It doesn't tell you guys to deny or approve the project. It's a full disclosure document. All it does is tell you what the impacts are, what the thresholds of thresholds of significance are, the impact, where it sits on that threshold, and then the mitigation, if needed, that will bring it up above the threshold of significance. That's all they do. It's not a thing that says, therefore, we shouldn't have this project, if there's like a lot of impacts, or no impacts, say, well, so, no problem. They don't say that. It's just a disclosure document to tell the public and you guys and the agencies what the impacts are and what they're going to do to mitigate it. And so then, all the agencies look at that to see, well, you guys are wrong, or, yeah, that looks good, They always have comments. Sometimes the comment is, very light, but sometimes they're pretty extensive. But that's on the record. So, yes, definitely. And they're included in the final EIR. That's what makes it final. It's like we've got the comments, and here's our responses to the comments. So we either had to change the text, some text in the EIR, or not. So that's how that works. So we were at submitted correspondence is acknowledged and made part of the public record. So that's just your letters that people write, like that are not already in the record, So additional reports, arguments, or evidence will be submitted. Of course, now it's on the record. The chair will ask if any of the commissioners have questions of staff, and that would be just like any other time. I'm done with the staff report. We've talked about all these correspondence and new letters, by the way. And all of a sudden I say, I talked to Commissioner Mazzoni on the phone this morning, and we talked about this. All that is done. And then the chair will open the public hearing. So proponents are given an opportunity, present their arguments and evidence, and then the opposition are giving opportunity to present. Then other public comments are given. So that's the part about quasi-judicial. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but who specifically are the proponents? Are those official
That would be
proponents?
the actual applicant.
The applicant?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like, let's say you wanted to rezone your property. Well, you'd be the proponent.
okay.
Yeah.
But who officially is the opponent?
Anyone that wants to speak against it.
Well, we would also have people from the public who could be proponents.
Oh,
too.
right. I could see what you say.
So it could be both the,
I was wondering.
Well, it's kind of a combo of H and I. Some people might get up and say, well, that's part of the deal. Like, there's going to be a lot of, like, let's say there's a lot of negative comments and cheering and jeering and clapping. Then the people that are all of a sudden going to want to get up and say, hey, I think this project's a good idea. Well, they're going to be afraid because of all the intimidation. That's kind of why we had
Yeah.
that other part. You
We're
know
not
what I
gonna
mean?
have that.
Because I've seen this happen before. It can be a pretty bad scene. So I would say proponents and opponents, that's just the people for and the people against. I would say the proponents, though, are the actual applicants. They're going to present the project.
And
they'll be open
then regular people come up and go, yeah,
then,
or
'cause
that's
this is-
later?
Yeah, this is after that. It says that, well, that would be opponents, and then also other public comments are given. So that's what it is. It's just public comment. But the proponent is in that too, so,
the proponents are first.
yeah.
Opponents,
Yeah, because the proponents also get to get up again and rebut.
well,
Because
So
a
there's
lot of
two
stuff,
rounds, yeah.
will be able to be said that would otherwise go unanswered, and it might be not factual, you know, and it's still on the record, so, anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead, so, no, that's right, next. J, the project proponent is given an opportunity to present a rebuttal. After all testimony has been given, the chair will close the public hearing and the commission will discuss the matter. During this discussion, commission members may individually ask questions of the project proponent, opposition, or staff at the convenience of the commission. So you get another chance to talk to everybody. So then, after everybody's kind of done talking, the chair will entertain a motion and a second. And the commission will render its decision at that point.
Decisions.
Decisions, yeah. So that's typical public hearing protocol. And that's mainly a lot for quasi-judicial, you know. Let's say if it was a legislative hearing, all that, well, it all pretty much would be the same. Because you'd have the proponent up there talking about why he wants the zone change, you know, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And then people that live next door that don't want the zone change would come up. And then other people that just happen to have something input to chime in, that would be them. And then the, you know, the person that wants to rezone gets up and says, hey, you know, this is really what it is, that, you know, rebut. So it's just kind of judicial. So you just gotta keep, you know, that's the order you go. It's not a big deal. I think
On a
we've-
regular hearing.
Yeah, I think
This
we've
is
had-
going to be,
Well, I mean, really,
A
if
hearing on
use permit, any
steroids.
old use permit, really, or variance, should be, you guys should think like it's a quasi-judicial hearing today,
Mm-hmm.
and then, you know, evidence on the record. And, you know, I always have to bring this up, but, you know, we pass a lot of variances around here that have no support. The evidence, so it's kind of a bummer, but just kind of think in terms of evidence on the record and being fair to everybody. And so then we get to what kind of happens, you know. So receiving public input. The primary purpose of a public hearing is to inform the public of a proposed project, provide a fair forum for applicants and opposing parties, and receive spoken or written input from them as part of the decision-making process. As the public is encouraged to participate, there are various ways to provide ample opportunity for meaningful input. So it's really about drawing it out of them, meaningful input. So to kind of help with that, there's a certain kind of stuff that conduct, you know, the chair kind of needs to kind of be the referee. And so staff has brought together some stuff.
Before we go into that, could I ask one question?
You bet.
The next meeting coming up, we are not expected to render a decision, are we? Or-
Well, you're gonna be making
Or provide a
recom-
recommendation?
Yeah, you're going to be recommending.
We are,
Well, the thing is with this one, if it was just a simple little use permit, you know, it would probably be a final decision. But there's a lot of actions that, first of all, you guys don't certify EIRs. The council does. So that, you know, you would recommend what you want them to do, just like a subdivision. You know how when we do a tentative map, just kind of like think back to the general plan or any zoning amendment that you've sat in on. You're doing this public hearing to gather all this stuff and then make a recommendation to council.
so that meeting will be with recommendation?
Yes.
That's what I need
Yeah.
to know.
That's how I envision it. Well, I mean, there's got to be. Well, I guess if you don't want to make a decision, then you could move to continue the hearing until, or continue the meeting until the next one, you know,
And
or
that would
something.
be a recommendation?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's a good question. I would say just like any other subdivision and stuff like that where you're not the final decision maker, you do everything like you want to, and then what your decision is, yay or nay, isn't a final decision, but it is a recommendation.
Well, I
So,
would envision that if there is lack of sufficient evidence for us to make a full recommendation, we could recommend to the council that they revisit and resubmit based on that criteria to the planning commission if it doesn't satisfy the evidence
well,
requirements.
I actually wouldn't go that deep. I mean, really, you guys have done this before. When you guys adopted the general plan, you made a recommendation, and that was an EIR as well. You know, and that's a big deal, adopting a new general plan. Were you here? You were
Yeah,
not here.
I
You
was
were.
here.
That was your first meeting, I think, almost.
But
So,
not as,
yeah,
not as contentious.
well, yeah, this is going to be awkward. I don't like contentious meetings either. But you're going to have enough evidence, believe me, you know, to make a decision. And as long as you keep, you know, keep aware of the testimony and, you know, and then look at the findings of fact, you know, and stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of legal stuff going on at the time. And it's really ultimately going to be up to the council. So, but you guys get to, you know, filter it out and make a recommendation, that's for sure.
And we should certainly track down the draft EIR in all
Oh,
of its
yeah.
glory and try to digest it as much as possible.
Actually, yeah, the EIR, it starts to kind of just lay it out. You know, it's written in such a way that it kind of makes sense, you know, when you read these things. Just like a briefing in a court case. Have you ever read one of those where they talk about the facts and then the analysis? And it's almost like telling a story. Well, this is just basically talking about the setting, you know, environmental setting, you know, establishing baseline, and then talking about what the regulatory setting is, and then talking about what the, you know, the potential impacts might be. So they have to, for each impact, they got to establish a threshold of significance, and then they talk about where this project is. And I would suggest just start reading it. You know, it goes sort of fast. I had to read every word so far, and I'm going to go back and read it again. But it's available online, and I'm not sure what's available to the.
There's a complete copy at the library. There's also one here at the front desk of the clerk's office, and the entire draft EIR is on the city website.
Right. So anyway, here's kind of what we're thinking. This is mainly, again, out of Planner's Web, but added to by City Clerk and Ron. Maintain an open and respectful forum. Don't allow for intimidation of any kind at the meetings. You know, that's kind of like cheering and jeering and noise, and that doesn't make for an environment that invites people up to speak. You know, it's intimidation. Okay, we're going to have a sign-up sheet. To ensure that everyone gets to speak on the issue, we suggest a sign-up sheet for speakers and speaker cards. Each speaker should get ample time to speak. Now, most cities have a 3-minute limit on speaking from the public. You know, I don't care how long, but it should be equal. You know, 3 minutes is really, when it's a lot of people, that's what you want.
It works.
Yeah,
I've seen quite a few.
right. So the way I learned was,
It keeps
okay,
things
someone
moving
goes
along.
5 minutes, well, that kind of means that the other guy can go 5 minutes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So it just needs
starts
to be
getting-
fair. But 3 minutes that's your call. If you want 3 minutes, you do 3 minutes. No reservation of time. Like I can't sign up and then say, I'm going to give my time to her, you know, and then you can't do that, or you can't, well, that would be seating time, but you can't reserve time or cede time to others. These are just ground rules for the receiving public input.
And the city clerk will be handling that. We won't be handling any of that. We're just
Right.
going
Well,
to
you'll be handed
yeah.
the sign-up sheet, and you'll probably be saying,
No, just the speaker cards will come to me.
okay, and then you'll say, so-and-so? Okay. Yeah, and then, you know, I've just seen this just recently, watching C-SPAN. You know, they have the lights in front of them, like red, green, and yellow lights. You know, yellow is when you have a minute left, so they do that. So, you know, we got, if you got to stick to the time. That's about it.
Do we still have a tone or something that goes off when they're almost?
If you turn your screen on in front of you, let me see if I can get my sound to work.
Okay.
It's logging in, you go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, just press
Well,
power.
one of the other things is have a clear rules and follow them for everyone. That's what I mean.
Consistent, yeah.
Consistent, yeah, that's about it. Time limits and any rules on how many speakers from each side of an issue should be written and clearly explained again at the beginning of the comments. And it is also, it is the utmost importance to resist the temptation to make up one's mind before hearing all the facts. Finally, just because you do or do not like a project isn't a reason to deny or approve it. Decisions should be based on evidence on the record. This is especially true in quasi-judicial hearings where decisions are supported by findings of fact. So really, the core, let's just talk about who's going to look at this ultimately. If it's litigated, will be a judge. So the findings of fact, the findings that are required to make these projects go forward, like a conditional use permit or variance, well, that's the body of the whole thing. So you want to look for the evidence on the record to support those findings. So that's the bullet points of the presentation. And then additional methods for contentious hearings. The above is for all of them. Speaker cards should have some instructions with them.
Good, good,
The
good. I like
deputy,
that.
yeah, the deputy city clerk, Sandra, provided that summarized instructions and is stated below. So apparently, I didn't put a closing quote. Oh, I did, right down there. So this would be on the back. Whatever's in the quotes here is what Sandra is recommending to put on the back of the speaker card. And that's kind of just for everyone to see, so we all have the same, everybody has the same rules. That's really kind of the truth. Now I'm not going to say that the proponent has 3 minutes to present the project, because that's where the information to them is going to be presented, that and in the staff report, and in the other materials on the record, like the whole EIR and everything. So anyway, that is your basic stuff for public hearings, contentious or not. The only thing is, a lot of times they are contentious, so that's why it's really good to just know the basics, know what the decision-making quasi-judicial is about. You just basically, you're weighing the facts and then making your decision, you know.
Is the sign-up sheet set in stone? Can people sign up during the meeting if they decide they have something to say?
What about
That's a
people
question.
that come in late?
We're just doing speaker cards, no sign-up sheet.
So
So
we're-
as long as you have the public comment portion open, until you close it, somebody can come up.
But if they won't have a speaker card?
They'll be on the back table.
Okay, so they have to
have
have,
to complete.
and then they have to let you know that they're gonna, okay.
So I guess there's going to be some, what's that? Yeah, you know, I could have sworn I had that in there, but I might have missed that one. Yeah, you don't want to have, now, the guy can come and rebut, you know, like we said here, we have rebuttal for the,
But what I'm saying, for example, is somebody's talking, and some of the audience hasn't signed up yet, and then they hear this guy refer whatever, and then they come up and get a card and rebut back. And it keeps going on and on and on.
I don't think so. I don't think they can come back up. Or maybe that's something we should establish at the beginning of the meeting.
That's a tough one.
I've seen it happen in some of our other boards, I mean,
Yeah.
on and on, you know.
Yeah.
Well, if we have, the proponents and the opponents, and then the rebuttal, that's just 2 rounds. It doesn't keep cycling through. We don't have the rebuttal and then more
Well,
rebuttal.
actually, yeah, I don't think I,
Right.
what we're doing here, so it doesn't get, because the longer this goes on, the more people get upset or not upset, whatever.
yeah, the public doesn't rebut the proponent's rebuttal. That's done. They just come up and, you know, rebut, just answer to some of the stuff that's been flung at them, you know, basically. So, yeah, so that's it.
So the proponents have a rebuttal, but the opponents don't?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
that's where I was confused.
yep. Otherwise, it'd go on all night.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Will there be a policeman here? Policeman?
We'll recommend that.
Because it would not be unheard of to have to say to somebody, you know, you need to be quiet, and then it's like, and you know, we want somebody, a professional, to escort them out.
My policy is going to be 1 warning and a second time, and you're
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
escorted out.
Luckily, they're right there. You know, I think don't you guys have panic buttons up there?
We've never.
Oh, because I thought, it's, at other city halls I've been at, the
I don't-
people in there
I think
have a
we-
button that rings over at the PD when there's an unruly person in City Hall.
There are.
But, so and they monitor that
Way,
there.
is that the one that's way against the wall?
I'm not sure, but they monitor it back there, but
used to be
I think that we could probably
Because if
arrange.
I have someone who's not following the rules or out of hand, I need to be able to have that person escorted out.
Well, then we will definitely entertain you know, that idea and see what happens. I don't know,
Yes.
I don't even work it.
Just from what I've seen, they'll kind of watch through this, route,
Exactly.
and then they'll kind of make their way through, you'll see it, and then
Yeah,
they'll just let everyone know.
I just want to make sure there's a presence
Yeah.
that's paying attention.
Yeah. I've actually been through a few of these, and it's really just raucous, not necessarily
I've been through a few
really
too.
bad, you know what I mean? But it does take a strong presence of the chair to keep the order. And that's basically, you know, what we're doing here is just to remind everybody what's going on. Because we haven't had any input about how to do planning to you guys in a long time.
Because
know?
sometimes I've been in on some of the water things to where there's just a person that just keeps speaking out. You
Oh,
know,
like from back there?
From, you know, from anywhere, you know, just commenting, and that needs to be stopped
Yeah.
too, because then so-and-so will start commenting, and so-and-so will
Yeah.
start commenting.
Well, we went through that just with scoping meetings, I think.
My policy's going to be to try and
Well-
nip it in the bud.
Okay, well, that's what it takes, and we appreciate that. Because it does take a strong chair to kind of make sure these protocols and suggestions actually happen, you know.
I
Because
have-
it's really about being fair. And the people that are out there disrupting it are not being fair.
One
So-
more question for
Sure.
me, and then I'll turn it over. I guess it's the elementary teacher in me. Just to keep will people get something when they come in, a shortened, that has this protocol?
Speaker.
There is protocol for public hearings on the back table at all times.
Great, because as
And-
long as they know what's coming up,
And it will be posted on the door. It's included, anytime there's a public hearing, it's included in all the agendas.
so, okay,
Well, I sure hope that it's the same as what I wrote.
thank you.
I didn't know about that.
And I apologize, my phone. The television does not want to connect with my phone tonight, but I screen share on the television, which will exactly be what's in front of you, and I think you guys have seen it before. I set my phone to 3 minutes. It counts down as soon as they say their name and address. My phone will go off, and you'll know when to cut them off.
Okay, great.
Just remember that it's only an event. You know, it's not going to ruin your life one way or the other. It's important decisions. That's why there's protocol. That's why there's litigation. You just got to be be right, proper, be fair. That's about it. And they have to be fair and proper too. It's a team effort. And you know, they're important. Their input's important. And so you can't take it for granted, or you can't turn it off, you know. I think you guys are going to do fine, especially from what I'm hearing tonight about, you know, you've been around the block a couple times. But this isn't just for next month. It's for every time we do a use permit or variance or zoning. You know, we just got to have these reminders once in a while. Maybe in the future, I'll do things like, you know, planning law kind of workshops about things like design review and, you know, I forget what we used to do, but all sorts of stuff. It was once a year we did planning law workshop.
Technicalities.
Yeah, CEQA is a big thing too. You know, it's a big learning curve on that law. And like I said, it's not meant to stop projects or make projects go forward. It's just meant to tell everybody what the impacts are and what the mitigation is to get the impact back to less than significance, among other things. But so if you just remember that, it's an objective exercise at that point, you know. I get real nervous before these kind of hearings. I never was good at them. I can't stand confrontational meetings. But I've done it for 15, 16, 17 years now, so I just learned to just, you know, it's not my, I'm providing evidence for you guys to help you guys make the decision and to help them feel good about it, or to present it to everybody. I don't necessarily have a stake in the action, you know, as far as what the decision outcome is, except to a planner, if the process is served, that you've done your job. Planning is a process. So this whole thing, when we do conditional use permits and variances, that's just part of the process, the planning process. If you think about it that way and remain objective, your life will be a little easier. Just a teeny bit.
And when
Do
we
I make sense when I say that?
and
I mean,
when
that's
we
just
get
my
our-
philosophical
Yeah.
outlook.
And
Sorry.
when we get our packet and there's something that it's like, we
Yeah.
give you a ring and ask you.
Yeah, you
what
can
does
email
this
me,
mean, or
email
what-
me or whatever. See, I should have actually put that in here, but one of the points that one of those websites made is don't wait until the hearing to ask the questions to clarify in the staff report. Ask ahead of time.
Nice.
I really appreciate that, because then we're not wasting time answering questions, but I will bring it up that you called, and I'll tell them what you asked, and I'll tell them what the answer is, because that's for all of you guys and them, so,
Well, I think you can probably count on a call from me before the next meeting,
okay.
because I'll have questions I collect.
Okay, yeah. And I'll definitely keep bringing on to the record, or if I forget one of them, you bring it out.
We
All right?
appreciate that.
Sure. That's it.
Thank you.
Are we all set? So we already approved the minutes, so I think we're ready for any commissioners' report. I know Donna had something to tell us.
I just want to report on there was a revitalization. You saw it in the paper. Maybe it was in the paper a couple of weeks, but it was last night. The city's hired, what would you call them? A consulting firm, kind of, or a marketing, or? Yeah, but I mean, they're considered a, right, called the Retail Coach. And so there was a workshop last night, and a young man from that company presented a lot of demographics, and I think the most shocking thing that he presented was the degree of leakage in sales tax leakage and stuff, that he was pretty aghast at that. But, and that was kind of dry and kind of, but it started a great talk. And there were counting Kyle, there were 35 people. So that is amazing. And what's really strange is over half of them I've never seen in my life. I thought, oh, these are going to be the regulars. They were not. They were like people that, like, what? So it was a really wonderful, Sandy and I were talking about, it was passionate. I mean, there was some headbutting but everybody had amazing ideas, and we're like, when do we meet again? Everybody wants to get together. We want to start this big, even if half of those people start something that's going to be rolling. And the very exciting thing was there were a couple of people I did not know were sitting in the everybody's young to me. A couple of young men were sitting in the front thing, and we were kind of towards the end. And one of them stood up and turned around and addressed everybody. And they were two brothers from El Cerrito or somewhere in the Bay Area. East Bay, yeah, East Bay. And they've got 22 acres, I'm thinking coming down from Dollar General. And they plan to do a large development, as he said, multi-million-dollar development. And he said, what do you all want? I mean, was that like fairy tale? And so, that was just like the icing on the cake, because we're all just like, well, what can we do? Da, da, da. But there were a lot of new blood, the Elizabeth that owns the dispensary, was saying that the business is going great. She's had some famous people that she couldn't name. But she'll watch them go to their car after they leave and look up and down the street and like, where do we go from here? And just get in their cars and drive off. So we're going to take that bull by the horns. It was very exciting. So we'll get the word out when hopefully it starts going along. It was the most exciting thing in, I think, several years that's happened.
When is your next meeting?
We were like, wah! So we all signed up, and somebody is going to put out, and maybe the council and the planning commission can get that next meeting information. Yeah.
Come to the next one. It sounded really good. Does anyone else have anything?
I do have a report. Actually, it's more of a safety concern, and I think it's been addressed. So this was something I was going to report last month. We didn't have a meeting. Was on the buildup of loose gravel downtown at the 97 to Weed Boulevard buildup there. There was a significant amount of large gravel to the point where you couldn't see the pavement in that intersection for a while. And it poses a great danger in regards to motorists, specifically motorcyclists and pedestrians. It just so happened that weekend I was one of the motorcyclists that went down there.
Whoa.
Fortunately, it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So aside from a few $1,000s in damage, I walked away with just a few new scars.
Ooh.
But the concern is that I have 30 years of experience as a rider and have done safety training and taught other riders myself. So I was able to control the vehicle in a controlled low-side accident setting to where nobody was injured. But my concern is that an inexperienced rider may have lost control of their vehicle and it would have gone into the pizza factory, potentially a pedestrian. I mean, we have a lot of traffic there during the daytime. Every night coming home from the office, I see people pushing strollers, walking with kids and things like that to go to the grocery store. And so it was something that just was a concern I want to bring up for Public Works to take a look and address that in the future before it gets to that level of buildup. Or if it's something that maybe we can look at a volunteer organization. I understand the city doesn't have a lot of funds for things like that, but maybe it's something we can rally some volunteers together and go, sweep up the intersection, kind of like we do with some of the revitalization things. I'm not sure if it was a spill or if it was buildup. It had been there for several weeks.
Oh.
It wasn't. It was something that
Might have
caught
been
me
washed in
unawares.
from the rains.
But I noticed it was there for about 3 weeks afterward, because several colleagues and other writers I know came to check
You'd
out the
think that-
area.
You'd think that the,
The Public Works, that's right up their alley, is
but
clearing up
maybe,
something
maybe
like
their
that.
street sweepers inoperative or something at the time. I'm not
Well, and
sure.
I,
don't even
from
know
one
if
of the
they have
council meetings I attended, I believe we rent it from Wairika, if I
Oh,
recall.
okay.
So it's not one that it's not a piece of equipment we own, if I understand correctly. And I did see it a few weeks on the way to the office one morning, coming in off of the north off ramp, with the roadwork people, so. But it was cleaned up, a few weeks later, but it was just something worthy of note. Just from a safety aspect. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, especially a pedestrian. They don't have any control in that kind of situation, so. And so I am, after that experience, very interested in the revitalization myself, because I'm a firm believer to put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to say something should happen, you need to get out there and push the broom. And that's all the nonprofits I work for. So, yeah, I'm very interested in knowing when that next meeting is.
Good.
And hopefully we can organize and, have little projects like that to help keep our city safe.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Daryl.
for sure.
Anybody else? So there is no staff report today?
Nothing from staff or from this staff member.
No staff report.
Well, in that case, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Adjourned.